I don't know why you keep banging on about Bakole. I don't get that, Spence. I mean, he looked crap in his last fight. I got a text off of Billy Nelson about a week ago saying he didn't want the fight. If he caught Usyk, he'd knock Usyk out. I genuinely believe that. I don't think Joshua can make he claim to be the best after Usyk because he got absolutely annihilated by Daniel Dubois.
Let's say Daniel Dubois goes and beats Oleksandr Usyk on July the 19th. Then what does Fury do?
Very hypocritical, I think. He's bragging about the losses that at the end. You can't just be known for giving everything you've got for 6 or 7 rounds. Me watching Liam in from the corner on the night, it was painful.
Welcome to episode 122 of Talk Boxing with Simon Jordan and Spencer Oliver. Joining us today is the former world title contender, boxing manager and member of one of the most famous boxing families, Paul Smith. Nice to see you again, Paul.
Nice to see you.
Everyone all right?
Yeah, all good, mate.
Good.
All good.
Good. Let's kick off this show with the superstar in the waiting, Moses Itauma. You were ringside. You saw his performance over the weekend.
Yeah.
Another significant performance from him.
Absolutely. Mike Balogun was a guy that was brought over to see if we could give him rounds. He'd only had 1 defeat out of 20-odd fights. No real names on his record, but he was sort of a dangerous southpaw, a little bit wild. But I thought that the manner he went round there, the execution of the victory was second to none. I mean, it was first class. It was the way that he was creating the space to get the shots off. I mean, where do you go with this kid?
You excited by this kid, Paul? You excited by this kid?
Very.
Yeah.
Very, and I thought if anyone was going to have a chance, I didn't think he'd do it without sounding big-headed. I didn't think he'd break Mike Tyson's record. But if anybody had the chance, it could have been him. He's phenomenal, and there's not many people we say that about. Even when Anthony Joshua was coming through and he was flattening everyone, he was an unbelievable talent, and marketability was out of the world. But with this kid, it's a bit different. He's special.
Anyway, I'm delighted to say that Moses Itauma's promoter, head of Queensbury, Frank Warren, is joining us. Frank, nice to see you again, mate.
Nice to see you. It's been a long time.
Yes, all of about 10 minutes, isn't it? Look, lots being talked about Moses. Obviously, you look after him. Francis, your son, looks after him. What's the direction of travel, Frank? Where's he going? When are we going to see him next, and what's he going to be doing?
He's going to fight again in the summer. Got to keep him busy and try and get him more experience. He's doing everything that's been asked of him. He was supposed to have had a big fight on a big show, but that show been changed a few times, so we had to go in a different direction. That's why he fought up in Scotland, and as I say, he'll be out again in July, and we're just looking to step him up into a real massive fight this year, and he will have a big fight this year.
Are you going to put him on the undercard of Dubois versus Usyk? Is he going on to that?
It's an option for us to look at the moment, and but as I say, we're going to make a decision later this week. We've got a few things we've got to sort out first of all.
Yeah, Frank, I mean, what is the direction of travel for him, really? You know, you're talking about Moses Itauma and getting these rounds in and, getting the experienced fighters. He went through Dempsey McKean, like a, knife through hot butter, and he's done the same here against Balogun. You go, what sort of level do you have to reach for this kid to get any sort of rounds? Are you talking like a Martin Bakole or a Andy Ruiz Jr.? Because that's really where you need to go.
I don't know why you keep banging on about Bakole. I don't get that, Spence. I mean, he looked crap in his last fight, and I thought he was lucky to get the draw, or whatever he got. And the fight before that, he got splashed in 1 round. I mean,
Ain't a good stepping stone for him.
Yeah, that's what I was getting to, Frank.
But no, I've got to tell you, you've been you bang on about him. I don't know what. Maybe I don't. Maybe you lot know better than I do. But Martin Bakole, do me a favour. I mean, he looked crap last time out, and he's. That's not going to be what makes Moses Itauma. Not at all. He's well past that. And by the way, I got a text off of Billy Nelson about a week ago saying he didn't want the fight, even if it was there, until December. I've got that on a text from him.
Yeah, no, in
last
fairness,
week.
He did say that.
Sorry, and the point about it is, they say also he said on a Box Nation interview that they've got a big fight lined up in summer. So let Bakole have a big fight, let him re-establish himself, and I love it. There's only going to be one winner in that fight. He'd go the same way as the others. He's too slow, he's too ponderous, and if you get hit by him, you should get arrested for loitering. I'm not going to just do something just to prove anything to anybody. I don't need to do that. We'll do what we've got to do in our own time and our own fashion. I think anybody he hits, anybody in the heavyweight division, if he catches them, it'd do some damage. It'd do some damage. And if he caught Usyk, he'd knock Usyk out. I generally believe that. But he needs a few more fights and a bit more development. And unfortunately, we lost 6 months through waiting for this situation to happen, which didn't occur, which was out of our control. So that's where we are. And we've got to make up for lost time now. He's okay. He's doing what he's got to do. He's doing it he's going about it the right way, and that's where we are. When he wins that world title, he'll be the youngest Brit to win a world title for sure, any world title for sure. That's what I think he'll be, and more importantly, he'll reign a long time. He's 20 years of age, and you know with him, you've got to look at. Again, he's not matured yet as a man. He's getting stronger. I mean, he was 254 pounds on Saturday, and he moves around like a light heavyweight.
Listen, good time to be Frank Warren in the heavyweight division. Talking about races and races that may well have been run, Tyson Fury continues to be very vocal on social media. Let's have a listen to what Tyson said, and we'll have a reaction off the back of it.
I hear a lot of talk of the Gypsy King returning to boxing, and I asked the question of this one: for what? What would I return for? More boxing belts, 122 of them. I've been rumped. That's it. Fair play to them. They've had the use for me. But I'm happy. I'm happy, contented with what I've done, what I've achieved, what I've accomplished. Been around the world and back again. And here we are. This is what retirement looks like for the Gypsy King. Not too shabby. I'm in no rush at all to come back boxing, get my face punched in. For what? What would I return for? I asked that question. So here we are. I'm retired and I'm staying retired. I've got nothing to prove to anybody and nothing to return for. God bless you all. See you on the other side. Like I said earlier, get up.
Well, the obvious takeaway from that, Frank, is Tyson's line that I've got nothing to prove and nothing to return for. I mean, you got a take on that? What do you think?
I don't think he has got anything to prove. I mean, he's got in his mind, and I believe in certainly one of those fights. He won one of those fights, but that's a debate against Usyk. He's very disappointed at, but he is where he is. He's in a good place. I mean, certainly in a good place. That was Lake Como. Not a bad day out. And he doesn't need to fight financially. He doesn't need. He's a very, very wealthy man. He's got a good family. What does he need to lace him up for again? I've said that all along, and there's no way I'm going to encourage him to box. If he wants to box, it's got to come from his heart, and he wants to do it, and that's. Do you think
it's true though? I mean, ultimately, Tyson's made these claims, and whilst we'll have a difference of opinion about some of the things that Tyson has said in the past, let's just isolate it into this instance. He's made the claim about being a generational great and being the best heavyweight, and there is now a different perspective of Tyson Fury. Brilliant career. I believe he opened up the heavyweight division by beating Klitschko back in 2015 and gave everyone else an opportunity, including Anthony Joshua, as a result of it. I thought his performances against Deontay Wilder were remarkable from the first one to the third. But he has been beaten twice by Usyk. He has tasted defeat. And I would have thought, you can correct me and smack me if you want metaphorically, that coming back from a defeat is what great champions and generational greats do.
I don't know, fight. First of all, the fights were close fights. They split decisions. So they were very, very close fights between the two of them. Most pundits now are talking about Usyk being the best of his generation. If Usyk's the best of his generation, then Tyson was the second best of his generation. They're the two best heavyweights of the 21st century up to now. We'll see what happens on the 19th of July, which I think is going to be a catalyst for heavyweight boxing, and to see how all this pans out. Whoever gets those 4 belts and what's going to be put on them as far as mandatory is concerned and so forth is going to be an interesting scenario. Whether Tyson at the moment doesn't feature in that, you heard what he just said, or what he said over the weekend. But the other thing was with Tyson, he is bipolar, and he says one thing and then says something else. That he's done that in the past. I don't know what he's going to do. Me, as I said at the start of this, I don't think he needs. He certainly doesn't need to fight. If he does fight, it's purely because he's a fighting man.
Yeah, because that was always the big thing, though, wasn't it? When we brought the bipolarity into the conversation, it was about the necessity to keep Tyson not so much on the straight and narrow, but you understand what I mean. Keep him invested and motivated. Yeah. Does the Joshua question have to be answered, though, Frank? Does that not have to be a fight that could manifest the outcome that people would be fascinated by in terms of the argument about whether he's the best after Usyk? Joshua might make a claim to that as well. Surely that question has to be asked and answered as well.
Well, I don't think Joshua can make a claim to be the best after Usyk because he got absolutely annihilated by Daniel Dubois. And if Tyson does fight against Joshua, he should, in my opinion, go into that fight as a massive favourite based on their performances. You know, fine, on the record books he got beat by Usyk, but they were close fights. Whereas AJ got well and truly obliged by Daniel. Yeah. I don't think he need. I mean, look, the fight is a fight that never happened. A bit like the fight with Lennox Lewis and Riddick Bowe never happened. You know, fights like that. Sometimes those, it just happens. I'd love to have seen the fight, and it was.
Is the money there, Frank? Just out of curiosity, because you and I differ on this, and I had the same conversation with Turki Alalshikh about the money for a potential Fury-Joshua fight. Because once upon a time, a while ago, it was mooted that everyone had to get paid 150 million quid for this fight, and it got on my nerves because I don't see why. The size of the fight is the size of the fight, and ultimately, if you can't get 150 million quid each, you can't. Is the scale potentially to get the kind of money that might make Fury pay attention to the economics of it there? Because I don't see that it is. Because if the Saudis aren't going to put up a facility fee of 100 million quid or something, how do you get this fight to be at the economic levels that Tyson's being used to getting paid?
Well, you won't, will you? Because those monies are not available now, and that's it. And that's the thing. So you want to incentivise someone to do it, then you've got to come up with the monies. I mean, look, that was the entrance fee into boxing for the Riyadh season. That's what it was. That got the whole ball rolling. As I said, it'd be a game changer, and so that's been. But you know, things move on. Things change, and that's where we are at this moment. And it'll settle down because at the end of this, these things are after a while have to be a business. They have to operate as a business, and then reality sets in.
Absolutely. Can I ask you before you go, Frank, just quickly, you might have seen the discussion between Tundi and myself the other day about Callum Smith and Anthony Yarde. And I'm going to talk to Paul about some of the things that Tundi said. But where he talked about Callum Smith ducking it, a fight with him, which I think is bullshit. And also that Anthony Yarde was this, that and the other, and Callum Smith hadn't fought. I tell you what, before I go on, why don't you hear what he had to say and then you can react to it.
For you to make such a statement, who has Callum Smith fought and beat of a level where you can say they are world-class fighters? Because guess what?
Put it back to you then. Put it back to you then about Anthony. Who's Anthony beat?
Lyndon Arthur fought Bivol and lost on points. Bivol is now the undisputed champion.
But Tundi,
we fought Benavidez. We lost in a fight a year. Benavidez was the undisputed champion.
Same argument.
Callum Smith has fought both guys and never even looked like he won a round. So how have you managed to say that he's in a better position, a better place than Anthony Yarde?
Because I think he's the better fighter.
Callum Smith has only ever beaten a fighter like George Grove, a British fighter at the end of his career. Was Anthony Yarde competitive against Kovalev? Yes, he was.
Yeah,
he almost stopped him in the 8th round.
Now, whilst you might have been delighted, Frank, that I wasn't able to get a word in edgeways, right? Where are we with Anthony Yarde? Because you will recall, and you and I had discussions about it about 18 months ago when a fight was being made with George to try and get Josh Boazzi in against Willie Hutchinson, and the Yarde situation with you was slightly fractious. And Tundi's trying to play this card that Callum Smith's a ducker and Josh Boazzi's a ducker. I think that's nonsense. But I'm more interested to understand where you think now, or where you're going to direct Anthony Yarde.
Look, him and Callum's a good fight. I haven't got a problem with that fight, and I haven't got a fight either with Josh Boazzi. Either of those fights, they're good. They're good domestic fights, and I'm sure. I mean.
So you're going to try and make that fight, Frank? Are you going to try and make that fight?
I don't think Tundi didn't say he didn't want the fights, did he?
No, he said what Tundi said was that Callum Smith was a ducker, and I'll pick that up with Paul a bit later on, and that Josh Boazzi was a ducker, and that ultimately everyone ducked Anthony Yarde. I would suggest that Tundi's quite difficult to deal with, and Anthony Yarde wants too much money at times.
Well, we will see. I mean, he fought last. He's had a fight. He's had a nice comeback fight now, and he's going to be in a big fight in the autumn, and it'll be hopefully one of those two guys.
Fair comment. Frank, listen, thanks for your time. Nice to see you. See you next time.
It's a pleasure, fellas. All the best.
See you, mate.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks, Frank.
Picking up again on Moses Itauma after Frank's gone. A couple of months ago on the show, we had Duke McKenzie talking about Moses Itauma and some of the potential weaknesses he saw. Let's listen to what Duke said and then pick up from that.
It's easy to get carried away with him.
Yep.
And it's easy to give him all the suburbative and tell everybody how great he is.
Yep.
The fact is he's going out and he's blowing everybody out of the water.
Did it to Maris Wack on the previous fight.
He's blowing everybody out of the water, Simon. As I said before, he's going to take some holding.
Yep.
Because if you don't hold him back, then his bubble can get burst quite easily.
Really? What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, he can lose. He can get beat by a seasoned, old, wily veteran that would give him nightmares and make him look ordinary.
Right,
Do you see
which
what
is
I mean?
kind of what Johnny Nelson was saying on Saturday night,
Yeah,
which is it's all well and good. He doesn't know what he doesn't know yet.
Yeah, that could happen quite easily. I'd have him in America where he could go to different gyms, with different champions, past and present, and really get this boy schooled because he makes basic fundamental mistakes to the trained eye. And if you move... Well, I don't want to expose him, Simon. I don't want to say he does this wrong and he does that wrong because it's not really my place. I'm not his coach.
You've got a view, though, haven't you?
Yeah, I've got a view, but I don't want to. In case he's listening, he is a bit sensitive. Do you see what I mean?
He's a nice kid. He's quite robust, isn't he?
However, I do feel he would benefit highly from going to America and sparring with some real world-class champions and former champions.
The world-class champions are here now, not in America.
Yeah.
The talent, the pool of talent over there is not there.
Wherever he goes. Apart from Duke getting his clothes from the same shops you do, Spencer, I like most of his opinions. What do you make of what he's saying? What's he digging at there? What's he referring to about the mechanics of Itauma and the challenges?
So for me, Duke's a great fighter, three-time world champion.
Indeed he is.
And his points are very valid. But, I think there's a but, going to America and sparring old seasoned pros will do you no harm whatsoever. It will develop your career. It will bring a young prospect on, especially heavyweight. But Spencer had a great point. A lot of the best heavyweights are here, firstly. Secondly, I don't see many faults that normal fighters have also that can't be corrected.
Is that because he hasn't been asked any questions yet? Or is it just simply because he exhibits all the characteristics that he should?
He does a lot of good things really well. And some fighters are technically gifted and technically very good. And you can tell he's working hard in the gym. And if you scrutinise any fighter, you're going to find faults. The best have them, but the faults that he has are minimal, in my opinion. I agree with what Duke's saying in the fact that a trip to the States will do him no harm whatsoever, but I don't think that he needs to do it to excel in his career. I think he's on the right track.
You can't find those faults because we haven't seen them. I mean, look, if we use Saturday night as an example and you look at, that Bellew and what he was going to bring to the table, it was the manner that Moses took him out, the way that he created his own space to get the shots off and get the full power in there and everything else. If you're looking for, where his weaknesses are and, the fundamental mistakes he can get from the trained eye, you can't see them right now. That's where he's at with it. And that's why I said to Moses actually on Saturday, how high do we have to go before you get those tests and those? Sometimes you get kids that come along that are very, very special, and he is that kid.
What are those tests? I mean, we've seen fighters before, and then they get into a fight, and you see some of the things that you haven't seen before. We saw Lennox Lewis get found out against Oliver McCall, that you didn't expect him to get found out in the way that he did in that particular fight. But going to Moses and the idea of who we want him against, until we see certain things from Moses, we're going to ask certain questions. Until we start seeing the level that's really... I mean, Dempsey McKean put up a credible performance against Filip Hrgovic, right? And so we base what Dempsey McKean is and what subsequently Moses did to Dempsey McKean based upon that performance against Hrgovic. When you're looking at him now and we're pushing Frank to see who we could go in with and what sort of names do you want to hear him saying?
I would really like to see him in with Andy Ruiz Jr.
He just discounted Bakole, isn't he? He's gone Bakole.
Andy Ruiz Jr. is a guy that I would really like to see him in with because we know he's tough, he's durable, he can whack. And surely Moses will get some rounds from him. You look at that, and I know he's just coming off a draw with Jarrell Miller. But you look at it and you go, that's a sort of yardstick to see exactly where he's at. Because if he goes out there and does a job on Andy Ruiz Jr. and takes him out inside the distance, you go, there you go, there's your answers.
It'd be an amazing win if he did that. I think that's a very tough fight for any heavyweight out there at the moment.
What's the incentive for Andy Ruiz to take a fight like that?
Exactly.
He's looking for a gateway back in. Moses Itauma has a #1 WBO ranking. that puts him back in the mix, puts him right up there, and you go, this is the young kid that everybody's talking about, the hot prospect, and you go back to the days of, when you're talking about a young Mike Tyson, everybody's talking about him, this guy's going to be the next world heavyweight champion. Moses is having that right now, where we're going, it's not a matter of if he wins a world title, but when he wins a world title. He's not going to break Tyson's record, but you go, the way that he's going through these opponents, Andy Ruiz Jr. is considered a serious, contender still right now. That is a great yardstick.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, I've got this in my mind's eye. I'd like to see him with Hrgovic. That's where...
Another great name. I would love to see him.
Because Hrgovic can take a shot.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see him. I think Hrgovic is made for him because he's slightly ponderous at times, but he's technically quite good, isn't he?
He's very good. I think the things we were talking about before, when we heard Duke talking, Duke's old school and he's of the old generation where Mike Tyson's came through, and you need 15, 20 fights against anyone. The game's changed now. So the fact that we're talking about Moses Itauma against Andy Ruiz or Filip Hrgovic, like that wouldn't be... We wouldn't be talking about that 10 years ago.
People like Lomachenko didn't have that many fights to be world title holders, did they?
No.
So, and he's in a division that ultimately was very competitive. So it's about the talent, isn't it?
Yeah, it's about the talent, but I think with the heavyweights, and it's about that development. When you talk about like Mike Tyson, who had like 15, 20 fights in his first year, and similar sort of like, another 10, 15 in his second year, you go, because it's all about developing and getting those rounds under your belt and experience. And he wasn't getting those rounds either, he was just blowing everyone away. And then he got the opportunity to win the world title and it took him out in 2 rounds.
And that's the thing with Itauma. It's not, in my opinion, whether he's good enough. I think he's good enough. Potentially showing all the right signs. It's once you get there, you need the engine. You've got to be able to do 12 rounds, belt to belt, in the heavyweight division, and he's only just come over from the amateurs. So whether he has that engine yet or not, and that wouldn't be discrediting him if he didn't, because you're not expected to just turn professional. Lomachenko lost the second fight for that reason. He just didn't have that hardened engine to do 12 good rounds.
Can I take you to what Tyson Fury said? I've got nothing to prove and nothing to return for. Do you make... I mean, he can say what he wants, and if it's his opinion, then you don't have to make him right or wrong. But do you think that's a valid statement, that he's got nothing to prove and nothing to return for?
In his mind and in a lot of people's mind, yes, he doesn't have anything to prove. But for me, if I'm Tyson Fury and he's had a phenomenal career, that Joshua fight is still there. I would still watch that fight. Even now, after everything that's happened, I would still tune in to watch that fight.
What does he prove by that? I mean, the argument will rage that if he wants to be the best British heavyweight of his generation, he has to fight Joshua, right? I made the observation that Joshua might lay a claim to being the best British heavyweight, and then, of course, Frank demolishes that argument, quite rightly so, because Dubois dealt with Anthony Joshua. Of course, Dubois hasn't fought Fury. So, I mean, is there a validity to fighting Joshua, or is it just an economic return?
What does it
prove?
When you're talking about
a vanquished Joshua and a vanquished Fury.
You're talking about modern legacies and eras, and you go to fight the best do fight the best. Let's throw this into the mix. Let's say Daniel Dubois goes and beats Oleksandr Usyk on July the 19th. Then what does Fury do? Because you go, now all of a sudden you've got this new kid Daniel Dubois who's put himself in this position. When you're talking about best of modern eras, you've got Anthony Joshua floating around there still as well, and you've got like Tyson Fury. Fury, surely that's enough temptation to come out. Yeah, the Joshua fight, we want to see that because that was the biggest fight in boxing for many, many years. And it's not as big as it once was, but we want to see that. But you've got this young kid still there as well, Daniel Bryan. Now we've got Moses Itauma coming in as well. That's where Fury's at. You go, if he retires now and you're looking at his legacy and you go, yeah, the trilogy over Deontay Wilder, going over and beating Klitschko in 2015 was a great victory. Where else do we go then? Then you're talking about Dillian White, Derek Chisora. That's where you're looking at on his record and his resume. You go, so you need the names like... you need the big other big names.
Who's got the
like
better CV between the two fighters, Joshua and Fury?
Well, I think if you're looking at Anthony Joshua, you go like, he's beat Klitschko. He's beat Klitschko.
Aging Klitschko.
He beat Povetkin. And then you're talking about like a Dillian White and, Andy Ruiz. But if you're...
Got done by Ruiz.
If you're looking at... Yeah, absolutely. But if you're looking at Fury, you go... Maybe his resume is better because the trilogy over Deontay Wilder was considered the baddest man at the time, and how great them fights were, and the victory over Klitschko going over to Germany to do that. You go,
that was the best win.
Absolutely. So you're looking at resumes, you go, maybe Fury is, but I think there's still a little bit more there, Paul, with you know, these fights that we've just been talking about and these names are still there.
I was over in Dusseldorf for Sky, and before the fight, they said predictions just, you know, I said, look, I think Fury's going to do enough, but he probably won't get the decision. I was within Germany, and I was probably being a bit bitter because I'd lost one there, probably 8 months late earlier or something. But I think boxing, for me, is always about timing. It kills me that Lennox Lewis beat Mike Tyson the way Mike Tyson was, because I was Mike Tyson was my idol growing up as a fighter. And I believe, again, coming back to fight Anthony Joshua, it's still not going to give us the definitive answer, because if the fight happened 5 years ago when both of them were in the primes, then we would have known who the real winner was. Now, Dubois beating Joshua, would that have happened 2 years ago? Probably not. But the fact that it's happened now and it happened so convincingly is why we're all speaking.
If Dubois beats Usyk, then that's thrown a right spanner in the works, because you go, now it's opened up another big debate. Absolutely.
I think we should see a carbon copy of the first fight.
Where does it leave Anthony Joshua if Fury isn't on his dance card? I mean, Joshua's obviously gotten cleaned out by Daniel Dubois. There was talks of him fighting Dubois. Again, instantaneously, I think wisely they avoided that, albeit I think perhaps if you felt you could beat him, you should get back in and try and do it. But if he hasn't got Fury as a dance card, Paul, where does he go?
I think they are the only 2 fights for him, in my opinion. So I'm not his promoter, I'm not a part of his team. But unless you're going to avenge the Dubois loss or you get the Fury fight, I don't see any other real way in or any side door that he can get back in.
Do you see him fight? I mean,
I don't think he needs to fight Simon. I don't think he needs to do anything.
Economically he doesn't, but it's a rather ignominious exit, isn't it? Yeah. The last thing you did was walk into 96,000 fans at Wembley.
Look, I think that
get knocked out.
Joshua's been quite vocal in recent times, as early as last week, saying that he's trying to tempt Fury out of retirement because he wants that fight. Because
he's also just had surgery, hasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. But he's trying to get him out for the end of the year because obviously Fury's got to get back in training and whatnot. But I think that's the next fight that Joshua wants. He wants the Tyson Fury fight, because if you're looking at these young kids coming through, you go, you've got loads to lose and nothing to gain by fighting someone like Moses Itauma, or you go back into the Daniel Dubois fight, which is going to be a hard fight for him. But that is the only option: Dubois or Fury.
What about just as a left field observation? What about if Dubois wins the belts, or Usyk wins all the belts? They get splintered, and then Parker gets an opportunity to fight for one of the belts against Anthony Joshua.
Well, then there's history there, isn't there? Because obviously Joshua beating Parker before in the manner that he did, and it's an interesting fight now because Joshua would probably start underdog going into that fight now with the momentum that Joseph Parker's got. But that's the other option as well, Simon, that if the landscape, the belts do spread, then there is options on the table. And maybe that's what they're waiting for.
Time will tell. Right, let's move on to an area of particular interest to you, Paul. Let's talk about your brothers and start specifically with Callum. Is it going to be Anthony Yarde or is it going to be David Benavidez?
I don't know. Watching the interview with Anthony Yarde's manager, you'd swear it was a fight that was absolutely, settled, signed and delivered. And as far as I'm aware, through speaking to Callum, there's nothing confirmed whatsoever yet. But
where would you like him to go? I mean, I'd like him to fight for a world title against Benavidez. Yeah. That's what I'd like him to do.
I want whatever he wants, and he wants a world title. It's not about money for him. It's not about just proving that he's the best in the country, which I think he's done by beating a good fighter in Joshua Buatsi. He wants to be a two-weight world champion. Now, I personally would rather him have hope. I was hoping that he would be upgraded to the full title, so he can go in a fight with maybe Benavidez with both as champion rather than challenging again. And if that was the case, it would have been ideal. But I've got absolutely no problem whatsoever as a brother and as someone who's involved in it, watching him fight Anthony Yarde. I think it would be a good fight. I think one that Callum will look really well in.
Question for you. So if there was more money on the table for him to fight Anthony Yarde, less money on the table, but a world title opportunity against Benavidez, what route would he take?
World title, was it?
World title,
Stephen asked him this question when he was questioning. He wasn't questioning his hunger or his desire. He was wondering what he was going to do. This was a couple of years back. Would you fight Anthony Yarde for X amount? He said, probably not, no. He said, well, you done then? He said, no, because I'd fight him for a lot less for the world title in a heartbeat.
Well, that was always my impression, because when I spoke to your brother about a year ago, a little bit longer than that, and spoke to him about what he wanted to do next and whether he was going to continue, and his main thrust was, I want a world title. I want meaningful fights, but my main focus is I want a world title. So I'm not surprised that the principle would be that I want a world title. I want to be a two-weight world champion. You've heard the conversation between myself and Anthony Yarde's manager, in so much of it's a conversation, Tundi, what did you make of what he said? Because I didn't think it made a lot of sense, and I'm pretty sure that you wouldn't have done either. What was your takeaway from it?
Very hypocritical, I think. He's asking who Callum Smith's best win is, and the question which you did ask, which he didn't listen to, was obviously who's Anthony Yarde's best win. Now, he's bragging about the losses that Anthony Yarde's had. Now, Anthony Yarde gave a good effort, but
He did.
it's a 12-round fight, and I've said this time and time again, and I've got to be careful because I don't want to get drawn into the side of me hating on Anthony Yarde. I like Anthony Yarde.
No, he's a good lad,
fighter.
so do I.
He's
Yeah.
a good lad. He's never been out but respectful and vice versa with me. But the trainer and the manager, the way he speaks, is like, you can't just be known for giving everything you've got for 6 or 7 rounds, blowing out and not having 8 or 9 and you're getting stopped. Yeah, it was a good effort, but it's a 12-round fight. And unless you're willing to see that fight through or have the engine to see that fight through to 12 rounds, it doesn't really matter how good your effort was because it's still the same thing, you lost. And he was saying about, like, he brought Bivol into it somewhere, which I was baffled. I don't know why he brought Bivol into it.
I think he was bringing it in to suggest that Lyndon Arthur got a lot of credibility out of that fight, and that's why the Lyndon Arthur fight was a good fight for Anthony Yarde to have won twice.
Yeah, but Lyndon Arthur's a good fighter, and he also beat Anthony Yarde.
Yeah.
But Lyndon Arthur, as a good fighter, is Anthony Yarde's best win, and he's trying to sort of compare that with George Groves, George Groves was a very good fighter. George Groves was Super world champion and was the #1 at the time when Callum beat him. That's irrelevant now, but as of now, I always felt Boatti was the best out of the bunch, and I always felt, without being too biased, Callum was the best in Britain at light heavyweight. Now Callum got a chance to prove that.
Yeah.
I still think Boatti would probably beat Anthony Yarde in a good hard fight because I think he's got a better engine and he wants it.
Because I mean, Tundi was trying to say that what got found out was, because I was basically saying Callum Smith is a world-class operator and he dealt with Josh Boatti, and what Tundi was trying to say was what just showed out actually Josh Boatti wasn't as good as you lot thought he was.
Yeah.
Where are you on that argument?
No,
Spence?
look, come on. We saw a fight of the year contender there. That we saw an unbelievable fight where both guys showed so much character.
Absolutely.
And Callum Smith showed us that he's still got a lot of desire and a lot of resilience still in there. And equally, as well, on the flip side, to Joshua Boatti, who showed a lot of character as well. And you go, like, it's not about Joshua Boatti maybe not being as good as we thought he was or deteriorations. It was about Callum Smith's performance. Yeah. And he showed that he's still at that level.
And
but
it's not just
let's
about
talk about Boatti Yarde.
How tough was Boatti?
That's what I'm talking about. If you're talking about Boatti Yarde, and I love Anthony Yarde as well, and I think that, I think they've both got the potential to become world champions, even still now. But you look at that fight and go, who would start the favourite there? You go, that's a tough call still, that. Very tough call, because Joshua Boatti is a great fighter, as is Anthony Yarde.
I want to move you on to Liam, and let's spend a little bit of time talking about him. That was a tough night with Aaron McKenna. I don't think all of us saw that coming. I'm pretty sure that you guys didn't see it coming. You would not have underestimated Aaron McKenna, but I think people felt that Liam had the chops, the know-how, the wherewithal to deal with it. Where does this leave Liam now?
I don't know. I saw the interview we did. We all went to fight on Saturday. We drove up to Glasgow, me, Liam and Callum, and I saw an interview saying he'll see what offer he gets before September, but it's got to be before September. And me watching Liam from the corner on the night, it was painful. It was sad. It wasn't nice to see. I know he's been capable and is probably still capable of a lot more than that. And the time out added to father time, bit of inactivity, bit of rust. Injuries, definitely injuries. I think ultimately it's his own body's way of telling him you're probably done now, and it's probably at the end. And we always said, you can't fight on and overstay your welcome in this game, and he knows that more than anyone. So I think it's possibly a bit of pride talking with him. And listen, you never know what offer's going to come, but that's the thing with boxing. When you shouldn't be getting them type of offers. The offers fly in, take them fast sometimes because it's an unforgiving sport. So
go on, Spencer.
I was going to say, we were there obviously watching that fight against McKenna, and it was one of those situations where you're looking at the passing and the baton in many ways, and you go, Liam Smith, who's been a great fighter, world champion, achieved everything he's achieved, but you're looking at it and you go, Father Time did look like it caught up with him. It wasn't just inactivity and maybe where it was at. He's in the twilight of his career, and you just go, is that the time to check out? Because there's something right.
He's had a great career as well, but it's a young man's sport, and he's looked old since he was early 20s because he went grey early, but he wasn't old, and in that fight he did show a few things, a few signs of old and aging, and he couldn't quite pull the trigger. Now that also goes down to inactivity, but looking at that, I don't want to see Liam like that again. No, Adam McKenna's a really good kid. They're a good family. We've got all the respect for them. We knew he what he would bring, but Liam maybe 18 months ago would have beat McKenna on
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Was it a combination, or more likely, not so much the decline in Liam, but the performance of Aaron McKenna, or are you suggesting it's really actually Liam 18 months ago would have been able to deal with that Aaron McKenna?
So a bit of both. I don't want to discredit Adam McKenna for the win. He boxed really well, and he didn't elect to stand and trade early on, which would give Liam more of a chance. He boxed on the back foot. He's a smart fighter, and as I say, the full respect to McKenna and the family. He's a good fighter. It just, me watching that as a brother, watching Liam from the corner in so many big fights in the past, just thinking that he's not pulling the trigger there, he's doing work to get there, he's getting in, then he's not doing it, and that's not laziness from him, that's just not being able to pull the trigger, which could be a bit of age added with inactivity, as you say. Now, sometimes it's hard to differentiate between the two. The second Eubank fight, it wasn't age. If it was, we'd have had a chat with him, and he'd have admitted himself it was completely injuries. In this fight, it probably looked a little mixture of both.
I think it's fair to say as well with McKenna, we found out a lot more about him, that he's not just a tenacious young fighter that likes to come forward and have a fight. He's got a great boxing IQ as well. Yeah. He's a superb talent.
Listen, whatever Liam elects to do, he will have earned the right to be given all the respect that he deserves for a brilliant career. Spence, last week we talked about Josh Taylor returning to the ring in his fight against Ekow Essuman as a make or break fight for him. Obviously he's stepping up to 147, so there's a little bit of latitude in there, but we still felt this was a make or break for Josh. It's a break.
Yeah.
When you look at the performance from Josh Taylor, what do you take away from the fight, perhaps on behalf of Josh Taylor?
Yeah, I think that we saw glimpses of brilliance there from Josh Taylor, but he couldn't sustain that. He couldn't keep it going. Like at the early part of the fight, first 6 rounds gone. You go, Taylor might have been level. He might have been one behind. He might have been one in front. That's where you was at with it. Subjective scoring. Second half of the fight, you could clearly see the engine had run dry. He had nothing left, and he was fighting purely on pride.
Were you surprised?
Yeah.
I mean, everyone felt that despite Josh's best arguments and constant protesting about this, that making the weight at super lightweight was a challenge for him, and going up to 147 was going to be
the answer.
A Hail Mary.
That's what I thought. I thought going to 147, we clearly see that he'd outgrown super lightweight. I was chatting to him all week up there. He seemed like in a good headspace. He looked more healthier. And you go, now we're going to find out exactly what you got left. Let's not forget he's 34 years of age. Some fighters age, sooner rather than other fighters. Some people's longevity is not that. And I think what we saw there was that we saw glimpses, like I say, of brilliance, but he couldn't contain it. He couldn't sustain it, sorry.
Where does he go? I mean, we've got someone that I think has never been given the prerequisite amount of respect for his achievements. I think he wasn't looked after by the broadcasters. He wasn't given the focus that he should have got when he became an undisputed champion in his weight class. But he's now off the back of 3 defeats. Some people would argue 4. I think most people would say 4 because the Jack Catterall first fight was a travesty. There's no shame in losing to Teofimo Lopez, but lose he did. Categorically got beaten by Jack Catterall in the second fight and has now lost to a very decent fighter in Ekow Essuman, but not someone that people would have put on paper was going to trouble Josh Taylor to such a point that he loses his fight. What are the options now for Josh?
As you've just said that, no disrespect to Jack Catterall, but the levels just dropped slightly from Lopez down to Catterall, but then it's dropped a fair bit. No disrespect to Essuman, to Ekow Essuman, who did great. We were commentating on the fight, and what I noticed on the night is the shots will have an effect at 140 against them opponents, but Essuman's just solid and he's going to take them. But the level of ability, he's not knocking on the door for undisputed championship fights, Essuman, you know what I mean? And the fight on the weekend, it was a bit of a role reversal for me. I felt Essuman would start fast, Taylor would warm into it because he's got the more experience, and Taylor started really fast. And as you said before, Spence, it's a difficult task to maintain.
Where's the decline come in from Josh? Because in the Ramirez fight, he was impressive. Yeah. He goes into the Catterall fight with a complete disdain and contempt for Jack Catterall, beneath me. And from that point, we've not seen the same. The Josh Taylor that left the ring against the Ramirez hasn't turned up again, has he?
No, but then he's been boxing a higher caliber opponent. That's an argument. You go like Teofimo Lopez.
Great fight.
You know, great fighter. Jack Catterall's very difficult to beat when he gets in it. Yeah, Regis Prograis, you know, that was a great fight as well. But you look at it and you go, it maybe had been a slight decline because Father Time does catch up with you as well. Like I say, 34 years of age, but he's been boxing a very good standard of fight. But what we saw against Essuman,
the amateur career.
yeah, the amateur. That's what I'm saying. He's been around a long time, you know. But what we saw against Essuman was there was a guy there that he hurt Essuman a few times. Maybe early on he might have been able to capitalise on that, but he couldn't do it. He couldn't sustain it.
The weight as well.
Yeah, but with that higher weight, that's what Simon was referring to. You go, we thought he was going to get better and his engine would be better, but you know, it might be just a case of, you know, that slight decline, that he just hasn't got that extra little bit.
He's been around for a long time.
Absolutely.
I was in the wild card with all the lads up the gym and my brothers in 2012. And Josh Taylor was there with a couple of lads from the local boxing gym, and they were knocking 7 bells out of seasoned pros.
Right. What was he
Taylor
like?
Was the standout of the amateur group at the time.
What was the build-up like in the gym? You know, he's going through this fight camp and whatnot. I'm not asking you to give anything away, but I'm saying, what was the general feeling around it?
I don't go in there much of a day. Like I go in of a night with my son, and for the amateur set up in the day, it's the pros, and we're in a different gym at the moment. But we obviously see and hear things what's happening, and I believe he was having a decent camp.
Can Ekow kick on? I mean, I saw Ekow fight Chris Congo in a fight that he was expected to lose. I thought he was brilliant in that fight, won the fight, then loses his next fight, builds some momentum again now. He's now built some momentum. Can he go get a world title shot against someone like Barrios and win it?
This is the thing that you've just been saying. We shouldn't, it's similar to what we said about McKenna, we shouldn't be discrediting him for the win.
Yeah.
And just, Taylor was bad or Taylor was all. It was a really good win, and he did well, he boxed well, especially the last 6 rounds. It was hard to give Taylor a round after the last 6 rounds.
But he showed, like I say, he was hurt a couple of times, showed a lot of character, come back. He's 36 years of age, let's not forget.
Yeah.
He deserves that shot. He does deserve one, but you're going, where does he go? Is it, you talking like a Boots Ennis? You know, you're looking at Barrios would be the better shot for him because, you know, he's got the WBC title and you go, if you can get that opportunity, then
well,
great.
I mentioned Barrios, and it brings up a thorny subject, and I hope you think it's thorny, Paul, about Manny Pacquiao and the WBC's decision to bring him back in and mandate or allow a fight between him and Barrios for the welterweight title. I mean, this can't be right, can it?
I'm more angry and wound up at Pacquiao's decision to want to fight on. You're not short of money, so it's ego. And if you can't drop the ego and try and fight on at that age, it's all you're really doing it for. Surely you don't think you can come back and win a world title at this level. I see Klitschko all the time hinting about coming back. Like you were on the decline 10 years ago. Nothing's going to change.
Don't you think the sanctioning body should be saying,
there's not a chance he should be fighting for a world title. We've seen fighters, my brother Liam had to do, he had to fly to Spain to have a quick fight to get a win so you can then challenge for the title. He's coming back after such a long layoff and he's been put in straight away for the world title fight.
I think, listen, going off merit, because he's an 8-weight world champion and he's Manny Pacquiao, you go, he's been gifted that opportunity, is a disgrace, I think, from the WBC's point of view. You go, how do you allow that to happen? If you want in any credibility, you go, you've got these kids that are grafting to get to this position to fight for these world titles, all of a sudden Manny comes in and you allow it. I think it's an absolute disgrace.
I agree.
I don't think I've spoken to you since the Eubank-Ben fight. Where were you on that fight, and are you in the camp of wanting to see a rematch?
Thought it was a great atmosphere on the night being there. I watched it from a few rows back. I think it was a clear winner for Eubank. I didn't think it was close, as people were making out. But I thought it was a very good effort from Conor Benn, who had a good go. Would I watch a rematch? Yeah. Mm-hmm. If it was in another stadium like that, I would probably go as well.
Do you think it merits
the atmosphere was really good? I say this all the time. I don't think either fighter are of the level of what the public would probably concede them to be. Mm-hmm. But because they're both similar levels at the moment, it's always going to be a good fight. Added to that, the bad blood. I thought Eubank did great, by the way. And I think he needs a lot of credit and praise for really biting down, digging in, and keeping the fight going and the pace going that he set. He wanted to win more than anything in that fight, and I felt like he showed it. And it was a good all-round story. Seeing the dad on the night here and simply the best. It was nostalgia that won on the night. And I was a sucker for it myself. I got suckered in. Would I watch it again? Yeah.
Of course, listen, you think about like inspiring, you know, new generations and whatnot, because of the history of the fathers that go back, there was a lot of interest in it for, you know, the guys that dip their toe in and out of water, don't maybe watch boxing as regularly as they do. And I think that would have inspired a younger generation to want to take up boxing. And would we go, like, if you're looking at the landscape for them two, and where do they go? There's no world title opportunity for either of them right now. You go, so of course they're going to run it back.
I was like
financially,
a
it's big money, but it was a great fight. You can't deny that.
I was slagging Cena off for having his own music coming to the ring, and as soon as I seen him get out the car, I said, I hope they play Simply the Best. And I was hoping that they played it, and they started playing it. The nostalgia one for me, definitely.
Can I ask you finally before we go? I mean, obviously Dave Allen's had a great win last week against Johnny Fisher. What did you think of the fight, and where do you think? I mean, obviously Dave Allen's such a lovely fella, so laid back and so calm and so self-effacing and unassuming. What did you make of his performance in that fight, and where do you think he should go next, Paul?
Thought he'd done well. Again, I can't be a hypocrite. I said online, I really did want to see Dave Allen fighting again after the career that he's had, and it's been a sort of a second part of his career. But
what, specifically because of the performance against Fraser Clark or something like that?
Yeah, but he's got Johnny Fisher's number, you know, and no disrespect to Johnny Fisher, he's a nice lad, and a great ticket seller, brilliant for boxing, but I'm struggling to see where he would go now after losing to Dave Allen the way he has. And the first fight, obviously, I think Dave Allen just knew that he had his number. Now, I had a little bet on the fight on those rounds, round 4 and round 5. For that. I just thought he'd chip away, take what he had. But that's what it looked like on the night. He was just absorbing.
Where's he go? I mean,
Fisher started in third or fourth gear
Jamie Moore constantly says, or is now saying, because one of the things that David said about was that he swallowed the fight against Fraser, wasn't it?
Fraser,
yeah.
Fraser.
And Jamie Moore came in the studio and said, no, he didn't swallow the fight. He says that about himself, but it's not true. And he's a damn sight better than he gives himself credit for. Yeah. And if we apply Dave Allen, then we've got outcomes that are far more significant than perhaps he realises. With that in mind, do you think that A, that's right, and B, where do you think you can get to? Do you think a fight against someone like David Adelaide for the British title, if David comes through against Jamie TKV, or the winner of that fight, shall we say, is the natural destination for Dave Allen?
So I said this on Twitter, someone was, and I trust Jamie Moore, I believe what he's saying. If Jamie Moore's saying that, he doesn't say things for cameras or
for effect.
So if he's saying that, I do believe that. What I didn't like with Dave Allen when he was fighting Johnny Fisher, all the niceties, like, you're fighting him. You know, there's too much respect there, like touching gloves, and I don't think he should fight me next because, you know, it's not that he's a friend. And that. If you can get the most money for yourself and beat someone like him and make your way back for your career, you got to think about your career. I mentioned about the David Adelaide fight, and I wouldn't personally like to see it. I think Adelaide would have too much for him. But again,
really,
that's my opinion. But I've been wrong plenty of times before, and I'm sure I'm going to be wrong again. That's just me watching what I've saw of Dave Allen.
And
I'm not trying to put Johnny Fisher down saying this either. I just think it's another step up, and the way he punches Adelaide, how he looked. Don't get me wrong, listen, the Jamie TKV fight, they know each other inside out. Probably why it was cagey, probably why TKV was winning a little bit, and the controversial ending of it. But I personally, I don't know where he's going to go, but I'm sure with Jamie Moore looking after him and the team around him, he'll be guided in the right way and looked after.
Well, we'll ask Dave next week, because he's on next week with us next week.
Absolutely, but surely British title is the natural,
be a great
obvious
story
step,
if you win
because
the title.
that's the dream. That's where he sees himself sat at.
Right, fellas, that's it for episode 122 of Talk Boxing. Thanks to Spence, thanks to Paul, and obviously Frank Warren. And we'll see you guys next time we're out.